My girlfriend slammed me with a list of ways I've hurt her. I no longer feel loved or respected. After one argument, this sweet soul turned cold. Now I'm desperate to make amends before she walks away for good. Can our love survive my neglect? Hello, I am a 23-year-old male and I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend for just over a year. Overall, our relationship has been quite positive, but we recently experienced our first argument, and she has been behaving differently ever since. How can I mend our relationship and win her back? My girlfriend is typically extremely sweet, affectionate, loving, thoughtful, attentive, supportive, understanding, selfless, and nurturing. She is genuinely one of the best people I have ever met. She consistently shows kindness to others, even to complete strangers, makes an effort to connect with those around her, and brings joy to any space she enters. Frankly, I find it difficult to express how loved and appreciated she makes me feel. I have never experienced such feelings before. In recent years, I have primarily felt stressed and hopeless. For a long time, all I wanted was to exist in my own bubble and be alone, but she has inspired me to look forward to the future again. We even made plans to purchase a home and move in together once we complete our studies, get married, and eventually start a family. I would say our relationship is nearly ideal, excluding a few issues that cause me dissatisfaction and disagreements. However, since our argument, she has suddenly become very cold and distant. I will admit that I have also been quite unaffectionate and cold towards her over the past few months due to the stress from work and my studies. I felt less inclined to spend time with her because my available alone time was limited, so I tended to prioritize it whenever possible. I contacted her less frequently, and we hardly did anything together. I also turned her down frequently, which I now greatly regret. Recently, my girlfriend had to suspend her studies and work due to recurring health issues. Although she continues to receive the same salary due to government assistance, the doctors do not yet know the specifics of her condition. They suspect it may be stress-related. She has been suffering from chronic migraines, is constantly fatigued even after simple tasks like doing her household chores, and generally falls ill often. She has also recently received diagnoses of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism. And apparently, her psychiatrist believes she may be experiencing burnout. I mention this because it is one of the other reasons I have distanced myself from her. I do not want to be the only one in the relationship who is working. While I acknowledge that she receives assistance, I am uncertain how she envisions us financing a home in the future since, at this rate, it seems unlikely she will be able to maintain a long-term job. I share this perspective because my older brother is also on the spectrum and deals with similar challenges. Another factor affected by her health is our visits. I always have to travel to her and she never travels to see me. I do not own a car, so I rely on a car-sharing app for transportation. She offered to pay for train tickets, but I do not feel comfortable with her spending so much money on me. It is always quite stressful, especially when people suddenly cancel at the last minute, leaving me in a bind. By the time I finally arrive at her place, I am completely drained and in need of some alone time. The final reason is that early in our relationship, I realized I do not enjoy physical contact, while her love language is physical touch. I had not disclosed this to her until after our argument because I was hoping I would eventually come to desire or appreciate it, especially once my studies were complete and I felt less stress. To get to the main issue, I recently visited her again and even offered to watch a show with her that she had been requesting for months. We watched a few episodes in the evening and I genuinely enjoyed it. However, the next morning when we woke up, my girlfriend was not feeling well. The night before, I had shared a car with a teacher who was coughing and sniffing frequently, and I likely caught something from him which made my girlfriend ill. She asked if it would be alright for her to lie down again and if we could continue watching the show later, to which I agreed. She even confirmed with me 3 times. Now here is where I made a mistake. After 2 hours, I began watching the show again without her. I realize this sounds trivial, but I honestly did not think it would be a significant issue and assumed I could simply rewatch the episodes with her present. I woke her around 1 p.m., and when she entered the living room and saw what was playing on the television, her expression fell. She asked why I continued watching without her and I panicked. I offered my apology, explaining that I did not realize it would upset her, but she did not respond further and returned to her bedroom. I attempted to speak with her, but it seemed as though she was not really present. I had never seen her like that before. She appeared completely disengaged except for the occasional tear. Throughout the rest of the day, I tried to make amends and apologized multiple times, but she continued to avoid me. I even attempted to cuddle with her, something she typically enjoys, but she rejected me and expressed no interest. When I tried to cuddle her in bed that night, she merely grabbed her pillow and went to sleep on the couch. At that point, I decided to give her space. The following morning, I returned home as I had originally planned, not because she kicked me out. It has been 2 weeks since that incident, and she remains cold and distant. I have reached out to her almost every day, checking on how she is feeling, whether she feels neglected by me, or if she is happy with our relationship, but she only provides short responses or excuses for her unavailability. She repeatedly states that she is exhausted, but offers no further explanations or anything I can work with. Last Sunday, I finally told her that we needed to discuss our relationship, and she dropped a bombshell. A lengthy and detailed list of all the things I have done wrong. Here are the key points. 1. I forgot her birthday because I did not bother to note the date. I only realized it days later when she mentioned a birthday dinner planned with her grandmother. I apologized, but I still did not write down the date because I am careless. She claimed I asked her about her birthday 8 times in the months following. I never attempted to make amends or get her a gift. She ended up getting herself a gift and asked me to accompany her to an event as her birthday present. I admitted that I was initially reluctant to go, but after her persistent urging, I eventually agreed, although I had made some offhand remarks leading up to it which she interpreted as guilt-tripping. Ultimately, she told me I did not have to attend if I did not want to, and I chose not to go. 2. I stood her up on Valentine's Day despite having a date planned. Truthfully, I was just extremely tired after school and went home to take a nap. When she reached out to me, I canceled the date because I did not feel up to it. She believes I would not have canceled if she had not contacted me. I apparently never apologized or tried to make up for it, nor did I get her a gift. 3. I also stood her up on our anniversary for practically the same reason as on Valentine's Day, and according to her, I did not genuinely acknowledge the occasion. 4. I have ignored and ghosted her for days, with her being the only one to reach out or attempt to plan anything together. She documented times when I supposedly ghosted her for up to 10 days. She asserts that I only reach out if I want or need something, or if I am bored and no one else is available. 5. I frequently reject her and have even made hurtful comments on occasion. 6. I engage in activities with others that I refuse to do with her, then share that information with her. 7. During the rare instances when I begrudgingly agree to participate in something with her, I guilt-trip her throughout, acting bored or displeased the entire time. 8. I have, according to her, once explicitly stated that I could not force myself to be interested in her passions. 9. When she attempted to confide in me about a traumatic childhood experience, I interrupted and told her I did not wish to hear about it, claiming I dislike drama. 10. I criticize and belittle her regarding her spending habits, despite the fact that she earns twice as much as I do, indulges in no expensive hobbies, avoids dining out, and saves the majority of her earnings. She claims I also inadvertently place pressure on her for being sick and not working, making her feel as if she is a gold digger. Though I hardly spend anything on her, my finances are just limited, and she covers most expenses like travel or groceries when we meet. 11. I seemingly make no effort to connect with her. I don't ask questions or show interest, and when she discusses topics unrelated to my interests, I exhibit boredom or disinterest. 12. I do not compliment her unless she first compliments me. 13. I neither make nor purchase gifts for her, which she claims does not bother her, but I also downplay the gifts she gives me. I express my dislike for receiving gifts and her spending money, telling her I do not want anything or that I do not appreciate her gifts. She continues to buy me things because she enjoys giving gifts. She tends to purchase items that remind her of me or that she believes I would like as expressions of her love and support, especially when I am stressed. 14. I make false promises or lie. For example, I tell her I am planning something for us to do together over the weekend. She will check in multiple times to confirm and I reassure her, but when the weekend arrives, we do not end up doing it because I never actually attempted to plan it. I confess that this has happened several times as she continues to prod and plead until I agree, even when I am genuinely too fatigued to do anything. 15. When she tries to communicate her feelings to me, I am dismissive, often responding with phrases like, "I am sorry you feel that way," or shifting blame back onto her. I honestly struggle with how to respond or provide support without sounding rude, as I am not accustomed to people sharing their emotional grievances with me. For instance, when she informed me that she felt lonely, I supposedly responded by suggesting it was because she lacked friends. 16. I encouraged her to meet new people and cultivate friendships, but when she does, I accuse her of inappropriate behavior interacting with other men, being overly friendly or flirting. She states that her best friend advised her to indulge in her hobbies to meet people with similar interests, and since she plays video games, she engages in conversations with anyone who messages her, treating them similarly regardless of their gender. My girlfriend tends to see the good in people and presumes others think the way she does. She has no intention of engaging in morally questionable actions or causing harm to others, which she believes is illogical. She is genuinely kind, friendly, and forgiving, but can also be very naive, gullible, and socially inexperienced, so I attempt to prepare her for potential disappointments. 17. I tell her that other men whom she is trying to befriend are not actually interested in her as a person, only wanting to sleep with her. Additionally, I reportedly dismissed her feelings when one situation actually unfolded with a particular guy who ghosted her after she mentioned my name. Instead of comforting her, I supposedly kept saying, "I told you so," repeatedly, seeming pleased about it. 18. I perform hurtful actions, such as the incident at her place 2 weeks ago, and refuse to acknowledge them or the impact they have on her feelings. I admit that a similar incident occurred previously. We had promised to watch the latest season of a show together when it premiered. She waited until the weekend to watch it with me, but I informed her that I had already seen it alone during the week. 19. Regarding her autism diagnosis, which was significant to her, I merely commented, "Just do not let it affect your work," and offered no further support. 20. When her childhood dog passed away, she chose not to call me but reached out to her best friend instead. She was fearful that I would complicate her feelings, although I am unsure what she meant by that. She eventually told me a few days later when I checked on her, and according to her, my attempts to console her lasted for 15 minutes before she noticed I became distracted, playing a video game while speaking with her. Additionally, she noted that 30 minutes after this, I launched into another lecture about her spending. 21. I am neither affectionate nor loving. Throughout our entire relationship, she claims I have only hugged her 8 times and kissed her fewer than 10 times, typically only when she has done something for me or has asked or begged for affection. She recounts these instances because they are so rare and they brighten her day. According to her, I express more love towards her dog in a 10-minute span than I do for her over several months. I often brush her off when she attempts to hug or cuddle with me and have rejected her outright. Even when we sit together on the couch, I do not allow her to lean against me. Additionally, she states that when we walk through town and she wants to hold my hand, I will allow it but essentially drag her along because I refuse to slow down for her, given our significant size difference. She recalls that one time I threatened to sleep on the couch simply because she sought to cuddle with me in bed. In her perspective, the only time I exhibit any form of affection is when I randomly grab her backside. 22. She has yet to experience a first date due to my disapproval of all her suggestions, without offering any alternative ideas myself. 23. According to her, I expect her to manage all the emotional labor alone. She believes she is the only one exerting love, effort, and commitment to our relationship. She feels the sole reason I visit her occasionally is to avoid doing chores on my own for a weekend, aside from assisting with groceries, since I once mentioned that I enjoy staying with her because it means there are no dishes at my place. She feels that I receive the benefits of a boyfriend without actually having to be one. She has expressed that she feels like a maid or mother, emphasizing that our relationship is unbalanced. 24. I have refused to inform myself about her diagnosis, which significantly impacts her life. She believes this demonstrates my disinterest in her and contributes to why I do not provide sufficient understanding or support. This summarizes her concerns. She mentioned that there were more issues but that she lacked the energy or motivation to document everything, especially as many matters should be apparent. Instead, I attempted to call her to discuss these topics further. After a few attempts, she finally answered and immediately began expressing how selfish, self-absorbed, cold, uncaring, unaffectionate, unsupportive, lazy, and emotionally stunted I am. She accused me of treating her with complete disregard. She insisted that I do not perform even the bare minimum and do not behave like a boyfriend. According to her, I exploit her, being willfully ignorant of how my actions have affected her despite her communication. She expressed that I do not treat her with the respect and love she deserves, and I do not genuinely care about her as an individual, only about the benefits she provides me. She stated that I occasionally feed her sparse affection and discuss our future to manipulate her into staying. She feels as if she is merely a placeholder or a temporary trophy in my life. I am only with her because she was the first girl to show interest in me, and I want to demonstrate my relationship status to my family, friends, classmates, and coworkers, since she is my first girlfriend. Most importantly, she mentioned that she accommodates my comfort, which she is now no longer willing to do. She conveyed that she has constantly had to defend and justify my behavior to her best friend and family, who consider me a pathetic boyfriend and man. She feels unseen, unheard, unappreciated, disrespected, unsafe, unloved, and unwanted. She claims she is constantly stressed or anxious, waiting for me to hurt her again. She struggles to sleep, experiences nightmares, and dreads my phone calls and visits as any interaction leaves her feeling worse. She shared that she feels just as lonely, if not lonelier, when I am with her compared to when we are apart. There is little difference for her except that she feels even more on edge with me present, creating additional work for her. She also stated that I make her feel unattractive and worthless. Throughout her entire monologue, she maintained politeness and refrained from outright insults, but her words were profoundly painful. I had never witnessed her behave this way before. She is usually gentle, soft-spoken, and sensitive, yet in this moment she came across as cold, calculated, and resolute. I do not agree with her on every point. I have my reasons for certain actions. Nevertheless, I apologized profusely and assured her I would improve. It seemed she did not find my apologies meaningful, as she repeatedly stated, "I would never treat anyone the way you have treated me over the past year, especially not someone I love." I attempted to have more dialogue with her, but she concluded the call by stating she could not continue the conversation and was exhausted. Honestly, I am at a loss for what to do next. I recognize that I made significant mistakes and regret treating her poorly. I was so absorbed in my own issues that I failed to notice the pain I was causing her. She has consistently been understanding, patient, and supportive, so I assumed our relationship was progressing well. Since then, I have been checking on her daily and making an effort to show her that I care for and love her, but she has been ignoring my outreach. If anyone has advice on how to regain her trust, I would greatly appreciate it. I have never experienced such deep love in a relationship before, and I genuinely cannot bear the thought of losing her. We used to frequently discuss our future, and I still desire that. Story 2. Growing up as an expat, I faced a chaotic childhood, with my dad's harsh truths hidden behind expensive trips. "You're just seeking attention," he told me when I sought help for bullying. Now, after years of turmoil, I'm finally free and learning to love and trust again. What's next for me? Off the bat, I apologize if this is lengthy. I do not expect anyone to read through it. It contains a lot, and this is the first time I can somewhat express my feelings about these matters. Everything I have shared is real and continues to affect me today. To begin, the term expat refers to a person who works in another country but only stays there temporarily. As an expatriate, you are not meant to remain in one location for too long, typically from a couple of months to 2 to 4 years. My father raised me in this world, and ever since he passed away, I have been stuck in the same country for 4 years now. I cannot express how anxious I have become as the time I usually would have moved away approaches. When I was 8 years old, living in my home country, my parents faced financial difficulties. We were very poor, yet they always tried to conceal it. They took my brother and me on expensive trips, such as to Disneyland Paris for Christmas. However, there was always tension in our home, characterized by yelling and furniture being overturned. This was particularly the case with my father, who knew something that my mother did not. The government was enforcing additional taxes on my father due to a childcare benefits scandal that was only uncovered in recent years. We faced debt collectors at our door, especially one who had a particular grievance with my father. One day, my father lost his job. Without any income, we struggled to get by. We had to live off scraps for a while, and it was dreadful. We were at risk of losing our home soon. Then my father searched the international job market and secured a position in Dubai. He would be working at an indoor theme park as it was gradually establishing itself in the Middle East. This first job was peculiar. There were months when I did not see my father at all. We received money at home, but due to the scandal, it soon dwindled. The eventual plan was for our family to relocate to Dubai and join him. I remember it vividly as an 8-year-old. I said goodbye to my classmates and received a goodbye book signed by everyone in my class. However, a few weeks before our departure, my father was let go for something beyond his control. Someone had shifted the blame onto him. If I had to describe the feeling of returning to school after I had just informed everyone I was moving to a different country, it was agonizing. I experienced more bullying than ever before. However, this did not last long. About 2 months later, as the reality of losing our home intensified, my father received another international job offer. This time it was from a company attempting to recreate his previous employer's establishment in Lebanon. My father would leave for another 4 months, leaving us alone in our home country once again. By that point, I was the target of bullying for having no father, with others claiming he had abandoned me. I consistently defended myself by saying he would return, and during one Christmas evening he did. This time, though, he instructed my mother to pack everything because we would be moving with him. I cannot fathom the psychological effects that an unstable home life would impart on a child, but after relocating to Lebanon, I began to feel the impact of change. To clarify, I was born with autism spectrum disorder. I was never formally diagnosed because my father opposed the notion. His views on autism were extreme, and he believed I did not fit that description. However, moving to a new country felt bizarre. We lived in downtown Beirut for the first year before relocating to an apartment in the mountains. I celebrated my 9th birthday at a Hard Rock Cafe and my 10th birthday at an Applebee's. I loved the cookie with ice cream. I experienced many enjoyable activities in Lebanon, such as visiting children's play zones and new malls. My father sought to provide us with a slightly luxurious lifestyle as he never had one. Yet, the stress at home began to affect both my parents again. My mother gradually became a recluse, rarely leaving the safety of our apartment complex unless my father was there to take us places. My father easily became irritated and often yelled at me or my mother. Whenever they argued, it always seemed to shift back onto me. There were things I did not need to know as an 8 to 10-year-old. I was also tasked with raising my brother, which eroded my childhood. School was terrible. I endured physical abuse at an international school simply because I did not know English. I learned English within 3 months and achieved high reading comprehension by that time. However, the bullying did not cease once I could understand everyone. It actually worsened. This theme recurred throughout most of my life. I was too friendly and new, making it easy for others to take advantage of me, which eventually reached breaking points. My brother faced similar struggles, and there was little I could do to mitigate his pain beyond playing with him on our Nintendo DS or the Wii. There came a time when I had to explain terrorism to my brother. Lebanon was grappling with car bombs and shootouts at that point. I reiterate that I was 8 to 10 years old, and my parents expected me to explain these complex issues to him because I was his role model. Eventually, my father's contract ended, and during this period, something rather shocking happened that I still need to keep private for my own safety. We fled Lebanon after my father secured a job in Mumbai, working for a large amusement park. During our time in Lebanon, he had worked with 2 amusement parks, both of which did not extend his contract due to internal issues within the country. My father often faced disregard due to being a foreigner. They viewed him more as a means to collect rather than recognizing his actual title, which was Chief Operating Officer of both parks. Around this time, my father imparted a simple lesson to me. This is a fresh start, so let go of everything from before and become a new person. So I did. At the age of 12, I severed my emotional attachments. I formed friendships, but none were permanent. They served merely as distractions for my happiness. This may sound harsh and somewhat psychopathic, but I did not establish a real friendship until 2 years ago. The most significant connections I developed were with online role-playing friends, as they could not simply leave me. My time in India was disheartening. My brother and I were isolated from the world, leaving home solely for school and occasionally for mall visits. I was 11 when I resumed school. My birthday falls at the end of the year. I believe this was the most challenging period for me, and this is the first time I am publicly addressing it. At the age of 11, I was assaulted by a classmate. This continued for several months, approximately 3 to 4. When I sought assistance from the principal, they dismissed my claims, stating I was merely a dramatic foreigner. When I confided in my father about this, crying and trembling in front of him, he said he did not believe me, claiming I was fabricating it for attention. After that, I began to emotionally distance myself from everyone, including my family. I developed anorexia after we moved from Mumbai to New Delhi, and my father resorted to hitting me to make me eat again. It became increasingly evident that I was regarded as the problem child. Teachers struggled to manage me, and my grades plummeted. Both my parents labeled me a disappointment and a burden. I forgave my father more readily due to the stress he was under, but I still hold resentment toward my mother. She lavished attention on my brother, leaving me to navigate challenges alone, such as my menstrual cycle, hormones, and body hair. I had no one to whom I could turn for guidance regarding what I was experiencing. I began having nightmares and self-harming, which coincided with panic attacks. Dissociation became a regular occurrence, to the extent that a school psychiatrist diagnosed me with dissociative identity disorder, a diagnosis I consider invalid. My only solace came from online friends, and I can never adequately thank them for their support, even during my strange moments. I lived in India from age 10 and a half to 15, spending 5 years there and moving from Mumbai to New Delhi in the process. It saddens me that I do not accurately remember my age during this time, as I recall the years of my life by the places I lived. In India, the physical bullying escalated significantly. Students attempted to scratch beneath my skin to see what lay underneath because of my different skin color. I was beaten and even stabbed at one point. During this period, everything became overwhelming, and my depression really set in. No matter how much my father tried to remedy my happiness with trips to various countries and purchasing gifts for me, it could not restore my childhood. I attempted suicide at age 15, but fortunately did not succeed. After his contract ended with the second park in India, my father was hired to assist with the construction of a theme park on Hainan Island in China. I lived in a hotel for about a year while the company was constructing on-site apartment buildings, so we had to wait until they were completed. Living in the hotel was enjoyable, I must admit. It felt like an extended vacation. However, the reality of our situation began to resurface when we resumed school. We attended a Canadian international school. However, the majority of the students were Chinese, with a small section dedicated to international students. We had 8 classmates. I mention we because my brother and I were placed in the same class. I was 2 grades ahead of him, but due to the lack of teachers and students, they had to combine classes. An exceptional teacher, Mr. Bryan, taught us at the same level as my brother. He covered every subject except Chinese. Unfortunately, after a year in China, he left. He was succeeded by Miss Raven, who was the first teacher to recognize my autism. While she did not label it, she taught me in a way that resonated with me. She focused on my strengths in English literature and allowed me to express my memories of past traumas. She was the first person with whom I felt safe in a long time. It is perplexing to consider that I had more freedom in China than in India. I could go to the supermarket and even outside my apartment. I was even allowed to ride a scooter. However, my relationship with my parents was reaching a breaking point. They continued to burden me with their problems, and some of the things they did to me are memories I would rather avoid. Since my father has passed away, I choose to remember the good instead of the terrible. Even though I was frequently yelled at, there was a brief period when my father disowned me after he discovered I was role-playing with people online. Some aspects were explicit, as I was a teenager exploring things I had only encountered in traumatic ways. He disowned me for a year, and our relationship has been irreparable since then, particularly from my perspective. I began to resent him. Once I turned 17, my life started to crumble again. My grandfather was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and despite surgery to remove his stomach, the cancer returned. COVID-19 emerged during this time, and my father was undergoing numerous tests because he had been unwell his entire life and wanted answers. We had planned a trip to the United States to visit Universal and Disney World. My father was also showing interest in me because I had a passion for theme parks and their designs, and he wanted me to follow in his footsteps. I contracted COVID in China, which was a terrible experience. I was yanked from my bed at 1 a.m. and taken to a rundown hospital, isolated from my family for over a month. During this period, the test results for my father's health came back. He was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin lymphoma. My father consistently tried to reassure me that it was a highly treatable cancer and that he would be fine. At the same time, my grandfather had opted for euthanasia due to his incredible suffering. I loved my grandfather. He recognized that something was wrong with me and always challenged my parents regarding their treatment of me. He believed in me even if he was somewhat stoic. His death shattered me. It did not help that my grandmother was now alone in her home and that a week after my grandfather passed away, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. With my father's treatment struggles in China, we had no choice but to move back to my home country so he could receive medical care. I was 18 when we returned, and I spent my first 2 years here caring for my father. His treatments and illness rendered him bedridden, and I was essentially watching him die before my eyes. I was simultaneously enrolled in nursing school, but with my father's need for constant care, I could not always be present. My mother did her best, but she now needed to be the breadwinner and spokesperson for our family. While caring for my father, she discovered our involvement in the childcare scandal and is still fighting tirelessly for compensation. During this period, I felt like I existed in a zombie-like state. I had no personality or friends, I was merely surviving. Then one day, my father passed away. We were subsequently evicted from our home and are currently living with my grandmother, whose cancer has reached stage 4. I think I ceased believing that I could live a normal life around this time. My mother and I continually argue, and I do not often sleep in my own bed because of the tension. I began studying computer science, which is probably the best decision I have made in my life. I've met many wonderful friends who support me, including my current boyfriend with whom I plan to move in very soon. I am genuinely living my life and I appreciate it. I feel stable without the fear of having to abandon everything and everyone. I formed my first attachment with my boyfriend and it feels fulfilling. I am anxious now that the 4-year mark is approaching, but I know I will not be moving to another country again because my father found another theme park project. I have received trauma therapy and was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, so I am finally getting the proper assistance I have always needed. I believe I am finally happy, even though I remain somewhat unstable and struggle with attachment issues. After everything I have endured, I think I am finally free. I again sincerely apologize for the length of this, but I am just relieved to have expressed it all. Story 3. My girlfriend and I started as friends at work, but after 1.5 years she cut me off saying I don't make her happy. Despite my efforts to support her through tough times, she only threw my mistakes back in my face, leaving me heartbroken and questioning my worth. How could things go so wrong? This is going to be a lengthy post. I began dating her approximately a year and a half ago. I would like to share some of my personality traits first. I am a highly sensitive and emotional individual who is greatly affected by those close to me. Human relationships are very important to me, and I can never bear to see the people I care about becoming distant. Now to the story. We worked for the same company, lived in the same apartment, and met while commuting together to the office. That is when we began our journey as strangers who talked. We started as friends, taking walks together after work every day. As we progressed, of course, there were differences, as one might expect. I realized that she had an avoidant attachment style. She was less sensitive to matters and emotionally and mentally rigid. To put it simply, in my previous relationship, I was with someone who responded to emotions as I do, but this experience was different. I recognized this from certain instances even before we started dating while we were still friends. For example, as a soft person, I often find it challenging to engage in altercations and heavy discussions due to my fear of being rude to others. She, on the other hand, seemed quite different from the beginning. She often insisted on her viewpoint during discussions and did not seem to care how her words would impact me, remaining unfazed by it. I noticed this emotional gap, as I typically tend to be very cautious about others' feelings in any discussion or argument. Another instance occurred during our friendship phase when she was returning to the city from her home. I asked her if I should pick her up from the airport at 5 a.m. She responded with a firm no, insisting it was not necessary despite my multiple attempts to suggest it. I did not want to push further, as it might have come across as overbearing at that stage. However, wanting to do something special, I prepared breakfast and decided to surprise her at the entrance of my apartment early in the morning when she arrived. This was at 6 a.m. and I was waiting for her. As soon as she stepped out, I offered to take her luggage, but she appeared cold and irritated. She refused my help, walked straight to the elevator, and rudely told me that she did not want breakfast, ignoring me completely as she left for her home. I texted her about having breakfast together, but she declined and expressed her frustration that I had not shown up at the airport. I mentioned this instance to provide context about her personality. Nevertheless, as our relationship progressed, I enjoyed her company and we had great times together. I was drawn to her spirituality. She often shared her spiritual beliefs and practices that she developed after her last relationship, which resonated with me as I have been seeking spiritual growth myself and desired someone who could complement me in that way. Things were going well, and I proposed to her 2 months after we became friends, taking a very slow approach. Our honeymoon phase was enjoyable, filled with lighthearted banter and fun. However, as we continued, differences emerged. Firstly, once again regarding emotions, I discovered that she became rude whenever she was angry. She would often call me hurtful names like fuck off, fuck you, stupid man, and asshole when upset. I realized that she struggled with anger issues and could be extremely ruthless toward me during those moments. She resorted to name-calling, used a high-pitched voice, and would hang up during conflicts. This was overwhelming for me from the beginning, given my sensitive nature. I had never used profanity or raised my voice during arguments. I found myself primarily trying to resolve conflicts while she would often blame me for our issues. I acknowledge that I am not perfect, but I believe there are two approaches. 1. Helping and inspiring your partner to improve. 2. Simply highlighting your partner's problems for them to handle. I often took the first approach, but found that she frequently emphasized my shortcomings during our conflicts and sometimes threatened to leave if I could not rectify them. I often felt as though I was being critiqued by a manager rather than supported by a partner, which became a recurring pattern that eroded my confidence. This decline in confidence was evident in other areas of my life as well, including work. Friends and colleagues noticed it. I began to doubt myself as I felt constantly blamed for all our issues. My sensitivity and softness often felt like weaknesses in this dynamic. Regardless of our fights and the blame involved, my intention was always to resolve our issues and focus on the positive aspects of our relationship. Conversely, I encouraged her to become a better version of herself and appreciated even her smallest gestures. The thing is, I do not expect much from people. Therefore, even small gestures mean a lot to me. However, she had very high expectations and sometimes made me feel inadequate. After several months, she secured a job in another city and left our company. As she started earning more than I did, the situation transitioned to a long-distance relationship, which added further challenges. I was unable to support her during her initial settling phase due to my preparations for graduate school interviews. She blamed me for not being there when she needed me. I felt guilty but had my reasons. I visited her a week or two later and she criticized me for being incompetent. She was right. I accepted my fault in not being able to be there. We had a good time during the 7 days I spent with her. However, even then, she voiced concerns that we were not a good match as a couple. I sometimes found her negativity unsettling, but continued to maintain faith in our relationship despite everything. I urged her to trust in us while we navigated these challenges, and to work as a team rather than independently. As the long-distance relationship continued, we found it increasingly difficult to manage conflicts and disagreements. She would disconnect calls, block me at times, or verbally attack me during discussions. Although the good times were enjoyable, the tough times were harsh from her side. She was very unforgiving when I made mistakes. She would get angry, call me hurtful names, and when I raised this concern, she justified her anger by blaming my actions, insisting I needed to resolve my own issues to improve our situation. Additionally, whenever I tried to share my emotions or concerns, she would dismiss them, claiming I was merely seeking her attention and asking for sympathy. After each conflict, I would typically take on the responsibility of resolving our issues and trying to bring her back to a good mood 80% of the time. Some of her complaints about me included being more action-oriented, focusing on listening rather than merely hearing, not sharing personal details with my mother, as she found me miserly for once or twice mentioning we should split costs for outings, experiencing insecurity or possessiveness at the early stages of our long-distance relationship, and not giving her as many gifts as she desired, which further added difficulty to our long-distance situation. I acknowledged and took ownership of some of these complaints. I worked on improving myself. I tried to be more open about our relationship with my family and close friends, surprised her more with gifts and dinners after realizing that gifts were her love language, and I stopped tracking any finances. However, I felt she would often bring up past incidents during our arguments, labeling me as miserable and questioning why she was with someone like me. Despite my efforts, I felt I was not appreciated for my small gestures and was often severely punished for my mistakes. I became more filtered in my words and actions with her, fearing her backlash and anger. Her lack of appreciation for my efforts hurt me deeply, and her disrespectful words during our fights added to my pain. I devoted myself fully to making the relationship work. There were moments when I contemplated otherwise, but I realized that if I had withdrawn at any point, our relationship would not have endured. I never gave up on us and consistently pushed for us to work on our issues together. As time passed, it became evident that she was highly critical of others as well, possibly explaining why she was so hard on me regarding my weaknesses. She had few friends, and forming bonds with people proved challenging for her. She had a poor relationship with her flatmate when she lived in my city, left her position at our company on bad terms with her manager, and struggled to get along with her new manager as well. When meeting my friends or brother, she would often criticize them, claiming she found them boastful or delusional for their comments. Her critical nature was challenging for my friends and my brother to hear from a partner. Whenever I was home and missed a call, she accused me of prioritizing my family and job over her. Recently, she encountered issues with her manager and filed a complaint against her boss. It was a significant event for her as her boss placed her on a performance improvement plan for 2 months. I supported her during this challenging time with strategic advice and pointed out some of her antisocial tendencies that had led her to this situation so that she could avoid repeating it. However, she perceived me as an attacker and dismissed my support as being of no use. She claimed that no one understood her, not me, not her boss, and no one else. As I mentioned, she would distance herself from me during my mistakes and tough times, which contributed to my feelings of being broken. Nonetheless, breaking up was never an option for me. She frequently told me that I should not be with her because I did not make her happy, which added immense pressure on me. I found myself continually trying to convince her, focusing on the positives. She was extremely loyal and trustworthy. I had experienced possessiveness in the past, but this improved due to her trustworthy nature. She was caring during my health challenges and was true to our relationship. When she began contemplating marriage, she started urging me to secure a higher-paying job than hers to convince her parents to approve of our union. She outlined non-negotiables, stating she did not want interference from my parents after marriage and desired to live independently. She inquired about my plans for a house or a car after marriage. In the last couple of months, we engaged in constant arguments over trivial matters during calls. It was her birthday in February, and I could not visit due to my uncle's 25th anniversary, but I sent her a cake and a necklace, which she again did not appreciate. She claimed I was useless and communicated with her sister, subsequently stating she would not break up with me because her family was not thrilled about our relationship. She blocked me and has not communicated with me since. I have tried calling, sending gifts, and writing letters, but I have received no response. I attempted to reason with her and even traveled to her city to meet her, but she did not agree to see me. She threatened to involve the police if I continued to contact her. Regardless of everything that has transpired, I loved her with all my heart and breaking up was never an option for me. I recognize that I made mistakes as well. However, I wanted us to operate as a team and resolve issues together. I have put forth every effort to reconcile. She no longer wishes to communicate, and despite all our arguments, I now find myself reminiscing about the good moments rather than our differences. I want her back and miss her dearly. At times, I feel guilty about my mistakes. I do not know how to cope with this situation as I was deeply emotionally dependent on her and feel utterly broken. I long for all the good times we shared and wish for her return, but none of my attempts have succeeded. I resent myself for making her sad and for causing her to cry at times, and it pains me to feel inadequate. I understand she was not perfect, and I never expected her to be, as I am not either. I genuinely wanted both of us to encourage one another to grow in a healthy way. That was what our relationship meant to me, and I did my utmost to support her in this regard. I recognized she had her issues, and I wanted to help. I never disowned her flaws and only sought to be there for her. Given the entirety of this situation, I seek an outside perspective on what to do now. What could I have done better, and what is the way forward for this relationship, as I had envisioned it lasting a lifetime and never anticipated it would come to this. Thank you in advance. Story 4. Caught in a whirlwind of emotions, I found out I'm pregnant after a wild weekend with a guy who doesn't want kids. At 36, I'm torn between panic and the joy of motherhood. My heart says yes, but my brain lists endless reasons to abort. Will I follow my heart for once? This is extremely long, I understand that, and I apologize. This marks the first occasion that I am sharing the complete story of how I arrived here, and it took significantly longer to express than I had anticipated. I am in my mid to late 30s, as is the man involved, who is a few years older. I am definitely past the age where one should be engaging in drunken hookups and experiencing unplanned pregnancies. I did not engage in any of that during my teenage years or in my early 20s, so perhaps I am compensating for lost time. I have known him for most of my life. Our mothers have been friends since high school, and although our families lived a few hours apart, we saw each other several times each year during our parents' visits. We did not actually become friends until high school. These were still the days of AOL Instant Messenger and MSN Messenger, prior to everyone owning cell phones. We connected over our mutual love of music, particularly a few bands that we were both obsessed with and that nobody else we knew really recognized or cared about. We would spend hours conversing online almost every day. There was always an element of flirtation. I was definitely attracted to him, but he was cooler than I was, older than I was, and he simply did not seem interested in being in a relationship with anyone, let alone with me. During the time I was in high school, we met up many times to attend concerts. Where I lived, we typically had to drive several hours to see the bands we wished to see. We kissed and made out several times, but that was the extent of it. I attended the same college as he did because he persuaded me to. He had already been there for 2 years when I started. We briefly attempted to be more than friends, but it felt so strange. The comfort and ease of our relationship vanished once we introduced that aspect, so we ended that experiment fairly quickly. He graduated and moved away to pursue the life we had always discussed. Toward the end of college, I met someone, got married, and lost interest in those dreams, or perhaps I told myself I had lost interest. I am still unsure of what the truth is. My ex-husband also did not appreciate how much I talked about and to this guy. He became incredibly jealous when I purchased a birthday gift for him, which I ended up never sending. I kept in very loose contact with him over the years, exchanging text messages here and there. It was not until after my divorce that we began texting more often. Recently, we had been texting more than usual. One of our favorite bands is reuniting and touring this year, and we made plans to meet up at one of their shows. In the meantime, he has never been married. He is always with a woman, but he does not commit for long, and he typically does not seem troubled by the endings of his relationships. He has never been able to commit throughout the entire time I have known him. More recently, he had a girlfriend, one of his longer relationships, lasting around 2 years, which is quite a long time for him. He actually appeared depressed about it, and this was the first time he exhibited any sadness regarding a breakup. We now live in different states, quite far apart. He resides in a major city while I live in the middle of the desert. My job recently took me to within about 45 minutes of his location, as we have a corporate training facility there. Several colleagues and I decided to extend our trip by a few days to enjoy a little vacation, which is a common practice whenever work covers our round-trip flight. He and I spent nearly all of my free time together, and it was the most enjoyable time I have had in a long while. We essentially spent 3 days together going out, drinking, and being intimate. He was an excellent host. We visited a number of fun places, enjoyed a great deal of delicious food, and consumed more alcohol than I probably have in the entire past year. I do not drink often, only on special occasions or perhaps during the occasional night out. We had sex at least 10 times, according to our count, though I suspect we could have capped it at 8 and still claimed we met the mark. I am currently 11 weeks pregnant, because despite being in my 30s and intentionally managing to avoid pregnancy my entire life, we did not consistently use protection. I think I actually enjoyed the risk at the time, which is rather sad to admit. I suppose my life has felt so dull and repetitive lately that I appreciated behaving in a manner completely unlike myself or pretending not to be myself for a few days. Neither of us has children, and we have both been intentional about that. I am not a declared child-free individual. Until now, I had always felt conflicted about having children. Part of me deeply desires them, but I also spent years knowing that my marriage was not in a state conducive to raising a child, so I think I persuaded myself that I really did not want children anyway. Mentally, I am still quite affected by my marriage, but I am making progress and am much happier now. He has always said he wanted children in his 40s. Well, he will turn 40 on his next birthday, but thus far he has made no moves to settle down and start a family. The issue is that as terrified as I am to be pregnant to give birth, to be responsible for raising another human being, and to permanently assume the role of a parent, I genuinely want to have this baby. I was taken aback by how accepting I was when I saw the result on the test, let's be honest, the multiple tests I took to confirm it. It was as though I was supposed to want this to be negative and I would panic if it turned out positive. But then it was positive and I felt a sense of relief. That was my gut feeling from the moment I found out, even though my mind was telling me I would terminate. I kept assuring myself that I would do it by a certain date. Then that date would arrive, I would be no closer to ending the pregnancy and I would give myself a new deadline. So now the latest deadline I established for myself is this coming Monday. But do I have an appointment? No. I tell myself I will call to schedule the appointment on Monday. Meanwhile, I recently had a prenatal appointment with my obstetrician and did not mention to her that I was considering not continuing the pregnancy. Logistically, there are myriad reasons not to continue this pregnancy. Being a single mother is not how I envisioned experiencing motherhood. I earn enough to support myself comfortably, I can afford the necessities and many additional wants. I am not wealthy, but I am not struggling either. I have savings thanks to my divorce and the sale of our home. Still, I would need to live on a much tighter budget if I had a child. Additionally, I live far from my family, which is not how I pictured introducing a baby into the world. Relocating closer to home would not be advisable right now. I believe I have quite good job security and my employer offers generous maternity leave, plus I own a home that I can afford and I have multiple pets that would be challenging to transport such a long distance. Then there's the entire aspect of being a single parent and how that would impact both me and a potential child. I know there are wonderful single parents out there, and I mean no disrespect to them, but in an ideal world, I would prefer my child to have two parents. The reasons against having this baby could go on and on. And that is not even addressing the fact that the father cannot commit to anyone and has not expressed a strong desire to be a father. I have always struggled with significant decisions. I tend to overthink and I usually make choices based on what others would want. There are a million reasons not to have this baby. I would be a single mother, I live far from my family, and I do not have a partner who is ready or willing to commit. Yet despite all of that, I cannot imagine terminating the pregnancy. I feel happy and excited about becoming a mother, even if my mind insists it is a poor choice. I do not want to make another decision based solely on what I should do. I have done that too many times and have regretted it.